Hey guys, this is ICCE523 and welcome to episode 3 of So You Want to Learn How to Mod. This episode we are going to focus on flares, which in my opinion are one of the more annoying things to work on when you're modding rigs and rods buses, but in any event it's important that you know how to use how to work with flares because it's an important part of your bus. Not to be confused with flare bindings. Um, Flares are basically just lights, whereas flare bindings are lighted objects. So you can see, like this brake light here, you've got the actual lens that is illuminated. That is the flare binding, whereas that lighted part coming out of it, that's your flare. So we're going to focus on flares right now, and then I'll touch on with the flare bindings in a later episode. Those warning lights too, those are just flares, because you can't do flare bindings for warning lights. There we go. Stop arms, flares. These dash lights as well are flares. So there are a lot of stuff you can do with flares. So it is a good thing to know. So this episode will be two parts here. First I'm going to go through the anatomy of flares, how to work with them, and then I'll do a couple of examples of editing flares, and then I'll create a new one. You can see how that works. So that's how this is going to run. So first thing, of course, you can go to your truck file format thingy, whatever you want to call it, that I talked about in the first episode, and there is a section on flares. Yay! So these right here are the different types of flares you can do. You can do a headlight flare, brake light, left blinker, right blinker, reverse, and then user controlled lights. Those are really important because those are what you'll use when you're making like warning lights and stop arms and that sort of thing. So there are two important areas that you'll have to be familiar with when you're working with flares. The first one is the flares 2 section in the truck file. And this is where you'll find all your flares applied and the positioning for them and all that fun stuff. So this can all be found in the flares section. If you scroll down, there's a flares 2, which it's basically the same thing as flares 1, except after your Y offset, there'll be a Z offset as well, which can be kind of handy, which is why I prefer using flares 2. You don't want to go crazy with the Z offset though, because if you make the Z offset too big, it just messes everything up. So you can use it, but we'll go into what that is in a second. So so I'll put this off to the side. And I just lost my flare section. Let's get that back. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so anatomy of a flare. So we'll just take the first one here. These are your headlight flares. The first number here is your reference node. That's the order. We're going to get into some math here. So for you guys who have gone through like plotting points on a graph and that sort of thing in math class, that's going to really help you out with this. So actually I'm going to pull up Paint. I think this is going to help. So so the first number is your reference node, which basically is an origin. So you have an XY graph. For those of you who have gone through this, this is your x-axis, and this is your y-axis. And then the origin is where the two meet, so that is your reference node. It's the origin of your graph. So right here, 0, 0. And I'll take you through how to figure out where these nodes are in a second. So the second number is your x-axis node, which determines the direction that the x-axis goes in. And then your y-axis node determines the direction that your y-axis goes in. And then you have your offsets, which how far the flare is from the origin in the x direction, and then y offset, how far the flare is from the origin in the y direction. So those are the ones you're going to want to mess with the most when you're positioning flares. There is also in flares too. There's a flare Z offset, which I don't think you really have learned about the Z-axis yet, but basically what the Z-axis is, where's my paint? Did I close out paint? Oh, there it is. So you have your y-axis going up, your z-axis going out, and your x-axis going to the right, and then your z-axis is at a 90-degree angle to both the y and the x-axis. So in this case, it would be coming out at you. So again, you probably shouldn't mess with that too much, because it really, the bigger you make your z offset value, the worse your flare is going to look, because it makes it look like it moves around a lot when you're rotating around the bus, and it's not good. So you can mess with that a little bit, but don't make it too big, or it really causes problems. And then go on to your type. We went through this before. You can make headlight, brake light, left blinker, right blinker, reverse light. You just use F, B, L, R, capital R, and U. So just whatever flare you're making. Control number. This is for when you're doing a user-controlled light, and that's these are all. If you're not doing a user-controlled light, you'll just put a -1 in here. But like the warning lights, for example, those are user-controlled lights, so you want to put a control number on those. So in this case, the red warning lights are control number 2, and the yellow warning lights are control number 1. Now the default control for those, if you don't have an input map, like I have an input map, so I modified my input map, so I have different controls for these. But if you don't have a modified input map, a flare that's set to control 1 will activate when you hit control plus the number 1. And 2 control 2, 3 control 3, and so on and so forth. So those are control numbers. And blink delay, I don't really mess with this a whole lot. I'll just put it to 0 for the most part. I'll go through that. I like to control my flares through the material file, which we'll go through in a second. Flare size, this is the next number. So this controls the size of your flare. So if you wanted to make it bigger, you would increase this number. If you want to make it smaller, you could decrease that number. And then finally, the material name, the material that you're drawing from to create the flare. These are all defaults, because those are reverse lights. So it's just using the default reverse light material. But like down here for your for your warning lights, that's the material that it's drawing from for the warning lights. and we'll go through that next. So that is the other part of a flare, is the material file, which in this bus, if you don't know which material file has your flares in it, you can just, we'll go back to the truck file. Just go through each of the material files until you find, like, I want to edit this light right here, so I'm going to go through each of the material files until I find that material. But in this case, I already know what it is. It's flares.material. Okay. So this is where you actually create your flare. You've got your material, and then this is your material name. This is the name that's referenced in the truck file. So this is our this would be this is actually an interior turn signal, the green arrow that goes on the dash. I don't really mess with this stuff a whole lot. The important part here is the texture unit. And so then you have your texture, which again, a texture is just a picture file. So you can make it any picture you want. And this is an animated texture, which means there are multiple textures in this string, so it's going to go through each of these textures and then go back to the beginning. So it'll go through this texture, then this texture, then it'll go back to the beginning, and it'll keep running through it. This one, it doesn't make a big difference being animated, because you can just do like a regular texture and just have one there. But these are both the same texture, so you're not going to see any difference when it goes from one to the other. But that does become important when you're doing like turn signals and warning lights and that sort of thing. So like if I scroll down to the okay, so here is a yellow warning light. I don't want to go into that yet. I'm going to get an LED one, because those are a little easier. Okay, so here is a red warning light for this is an LED warning light. So this is your material name. Ignore all this. I'm not really sure what all that does, but we got our animated texture, and these are all our textures that it's going to run through to create this flare. So you got off, red, off, red, off, and guess what? Alternating between off and red, what does that do? That creates a strobing effect. You're going from off to red to off to red to off. And then there's a string of offs. This is just so when the other, you got two red warning lights. So when one is activated, the other one's off. So that's what that is. So if I wanted to change this to a solid LED warning light, I would just go through and get rid of the offs between the reds. Okay, but these are all the textures that the flare will run through, that it'll run through to create that texture. Then this number at the end controls the speed of the flare. So and this is in seconds. So right now it'll run through all of these textures in 0.78 seconds. So if I wanted to speed up my warning lights, I would just decrease this number. Like I put it at like 0.5, make it run through all of the textures in half a second, speed up the light a little bit. And if I want to slow it down, I could increase this, put it maybe at like 1 second. so that it would take a little longer, so the flare would be a little bit slower. So that's basically it. So now I'm going to do a couple of examples here. Oh, I did want to show, so the incandescent warning lights are a little more complicated because you got some flares in here that, to create an incandescent warning light, you have to have flares. You've got your off flare off, but then you have like a, a lighter version of the flare and then a darker version of the flare to simulate how, it's not super bright when it first starts, but then you build up to that bright point, and then you have it tailing off again. So this is an incandescent warning light. You have your offs here, and you have your red 3, which is a faint red. Red 2 gets a little bit brighter, and then you've got your full-on red. And then your red 2 is starting to fade out again, and then red 3 you're fading out even more, and then you go back to off. So that's how that works. It's a little more complicated, but yeah, that's how we do it. So the first example I want to go through, because this is something that I get asked about a lot, is how to change the flash pattern of your warning lights. So I'm going to show you, obviously, all of my LED warning lights in for North Syracuse are strobing. So I'm going to show you how to take a strobing warning light and make it non-strobing, so just a straight back and forth. So you've all seen this before, but this is a 2014. It has a strobing warning light. So we're going to go ahead and make this non-strobing. That was a 2014 I spawned, so we'll open the 2014-1 truck file, and we want to see what material is controlling the warning lights. So we scroll down to our flares 2 section, look for anything that looks like it has to do with a warning light. These are all labeled, so it makes it really nice. So here are your rear red and yellow warning lights, and here are your front red and yellow warning lights. So these are all the materials that that are controlling those lights. So then what we're going to do is we're going to open our flares material file. It's still going. Okay, good. Didn't want that to stop. That stopped on me once. I don't know why. Anyway, so we're going to open our flares material file, and we're going to scroll down to that material. An easy way to do it is just Control F. So it was BBV8S1544. Is it case sensitive? Okay. Okay, I don't know why that's not working, but whatever. I know it's in here. There's the 544s, okay. So how these work is you've got a one. The 544 was basically just, I tried it when I first made this pack. I made separate warning light flares for each bus, so that's why that bus number is there. But you can pretty much, this is flare 1 and this is 2. So there's a separate flare for each side, so you can get that back and forth pattern there. So this is your yellow warning light number 1, and this is your yellow warning light number 2 under here. So if I want to make this non-strobing, like I said before, I just want to get rid of every off that is between a yellow. So this is an off. I'm just going to switch it to a yellow. Yellow. Off. This will be a yellow. Yellow off. Yellow. Yellow off. Okay, so there's 16 of these textures total. So 8 of them are for when the flare is activated, and 8 of them are for where the flare is off. So I want to make sure I have 8 yellows. I might need to change that off there. I'm not sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I need an 8th one here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now there are 8 yellows and 8 offs. So this will be a solid yellow LED warning light now. So we're going to go down here and do the same thing to number 2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's your 8 offs. And you'll end up changing 4 of these because there's 4 yellows and 4 offs that you have to change. So that's that. Now our yellows are changed to just a solid LED back and forth flashing pattern. Now we got to do the same thing to the reds. So we got our red off. We'll change this to a red. Change this to a red. Why am I doing that? Change this to a red. And change this to a red. Make sure we got 8 and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 reds, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 offs. Okay, so that one's good. And then we'll scroll down to the last one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 offs. We got a red off. We'll change that to a red. Change that to a red. Change that to a red. And change that to a red. Okay. So that's it. We just changed our strobing warning lights to incandescent. So I'm going to insert this back into the pack. Let it compress. Make sure it finishes compressing before you load your game, or it'll cause issues. If you do start the game before it finishes compressing, just exit out of it, do a regen, and then reload it. Takes a little while with the North Syracuse pack just because I got so many files in there. Oh, I forgot something. So we put the flares file back in there. Actually, no, we don't need to put the truck file in there because I didn't change anything in the truck file. So we're good there. Never mind. 2014. We spawned 555 last time. Let's spawn 560 or 559. Why not? Okay, so now we can see that we no longer have our strobing warning light pattern. If I can hit OK and actually get the bus to spawn. It's now just a back and forth LED. Okay. So that's that. That's kind of the lesser complicated thing I wanted to go through. Now we are going to create a new flare, and I figured something kind of neat to do would be to put a light next to the entrance door to that illuminates when we're loading. So that's what we're gonna do. So the first thing I want to do is grab a texture for it. Lens maybe. This is easier said than done sometimes. Go to the Sound Off website. This a lot of the lights that you find on a school bus are Sound Off lights. So this website usually, yeah, check this out. So I can just use this one. Do this. So I'm going to copy that image, and then I'm gonna open up the skins of one of my buses here, which they're all in here. Let's do, what bus do we want to do? We go for the newbie of the fleet. We'll do 613. Okay, so got paint.net open. We're gonna paste this, and it's gonna be huge because that picture is huge. We don't want to. We want to keep the picture the same size, so I'm gonna do. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a new thing here. And there's this cool tool that lets you select circles, the ellipse select. So similar to the rectangle select, but it works in a circle, so can be helpful when you're adding light textures like this one. Just want to make sure I don't have any of that transparency in there. That's good. So we're going to copy that. We'll paste it on here. Now I want to keep this as circular as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift, and that will take the vertical and the horizontal at the same time, so it keeps this in a circular shape. It's still pretty big. Okay. rotate this back to its original orientation, and save it. And we're going to put this into our bus pack. Alright, so now we got the texture onto the skin, so now we need the flare to light it up. So I'm going to go into the truck file. Which for this we'll do 2018-1. And we want a white flare for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one of the reverse lights. They're up here somewhere. Where'd they go? There they are. Just grab this one. I'm going to bring it down to the bottom. Make a new label for it. This semicolon, I'll just call it a loading light. Okay, now, first thing we need to do is find the node that we want to use for the origin for this new flare. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to spawn our bus, 613, which you should be able to see our texture on there now. Yep, there it is. And I showed this to you once before, but we're going to go to debug and show node numbers. So you want to pick a node that's pretty close to the texture that you're trying to put a flare on, but you also want to make sure that you have a node that you're going to be able to determine an X and Y direction pretty easily on. So, like if I chose this 95 here as the origin, I could do 99 as the X direction and 94 as the X direction, as the Y direction. And then, so that would make it pretty easy to place, because anything going the X direction would just be going along the body of the bus, and the Y direction would be going up and down. So that would be a pretty good one to choose. So I think I'm going to do that. 94, 95 as the origin, 99 as the X direction, and 94 as the Y direction. So those will be my first three numbers here. 95. And of course I forgot what the second number was already. It happens to me all the time. It's not going to matter which one I spawn, because they're all the same node numbers. Yeah, still a work in progress on the reflective tape there. That was a 99, okay. 95, 99, 94. Okay, so now I got my origin and my axes. So now I need numbers for my offsets, which, let me load, probably shouldn't close this game out because it takes forever to load in every time. Okay, so so we determined our axis here. So the positive x direction is going to be towards node 99. So you can see we're actually going to be a little negative in the x here because our light is a little bit behind node 95 here, so we're going to have to go to the left. But when we chose node 99, we determined that the positive x direction was going to be to the right. So our x value is actually going to be a little bit negative. And then our y value is going to be positive because we chose 94, we determined the positive y direction is going to be up. And since we're above 95 there, so we're going to try to, I'm going to keep this open this time. We're going to try some values that might be close to what we need here. So our x direction we know is going to be negative. So I'm going to try, I don't know. I'm just picking it. It doesn't really matter what you pick here. You just want to see where this player is going to show up from. So I'll do like negative 0.1 maybe. And then positive, we'll do positive 0.5 maybe. And then I'm just putting my Z value at 0 right now. This is not going to be a reverse light. This is going to be a user-controlled light, so I'm going to put a U there. And for our control number, if we want this to come on with our reds when we open the door and we're loading students, well, our red is up here. Our red warning lights are on control number 2, so we're going to want to put this loading light on control number 2, so that it'll come on with the reds. No blink delay. And we'll leave that at 0.8 for now. If we need to adjust the size, we'll mess with that later. Our material, I'm going to create a new material for this. We don't want to use the default material because it doesn't know it's a reverse light anymore. Since we put it as a user-controlled light, so default's not going to work. So we need a new material to do. I don't think you actually need this tracks, but I'll just put it in there because everything else has it. Tracks, loading, and we're going to have to create that material. It's not in there right now. I'll go through that in a second. Okay. So, to create this material, let's go into flares. I'm going to copy this. Put our name in here. And then our texture, we don't want it to be off. We want to find, I believe there's a texture in here for a white light somewhere. Maybe like BBV white or something. BBV white, is that what I want? Yeah, that'll work. So we'll just change this to BBV white. I'll leave that alone. Doesn't really matter what the timing is because you're just going from white to white anyway, so it's just going to be a solid texture. Alright, so we created our material. And then we applied it in the truck file. This is the right one, right? Yep, there it is. Wait for that to finish compressing, and then I'll put the other one in there. Anytime now. Seriously? There we go, finally. Hopefully this one doesn't take so long. Or maybe it will. So let's load our bus and see what happened. I think I see it. Yep, there it is. You can see it's very faint, but it is there. That's because it's too far into the body right now, which is why I like having that Z direction option. I can push it out a little bit. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to adjust the Z so that we can actually see it better. I'm going to assume the Z is going to be positive. So I'm going to try making that like a 0.5. That might actually be too big. In fact, I might want to... What do I got for some of these other ones? Actually, the warning light, those ones are set to 0.55, so that might not be so bad. probably taking longer because I've got the recording software going right now. Okay, it's done. So, hopefully, you'll be able to see the light better now. Yeah, there it is. You can actually see the doors are blocking it a little bit too, so that's not helping. So we'll need to move it, and obviously it's way too high, so the Y value is going to have to come down. And it's close, but we'll need to move it a little bit more to the left. So I'm going to do the X direction first, because if I get it away from the doors a little more, it looks like it's going to be easier to see. So let's try to make this like a negative 0.2, which may be too much, but if it is, we can scale it back. Let's see what happened. Okay, it doesn't look like much of anything happened, really. That's weird. So I'm gonna up this by a lot. I'm gonna try to make it like 0.75. See if I can get it to move. If you change your number and it doesn't look like anything happened, it probably means you didn't change your number by enough. This is the really annoying part about doing flares, if you haven't noticed. Oh, you know what's happening too that I'm noticing? You're noticing that the flare's disappearing as the doors are opening. We chose our Y node as node number 99. Node 99 rotates when the doors open. Actually, oh, it comes out way over here. So that was a bad choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a stationary node. That was stupid on my part. So we're going to use node 96 instead for the X direction. Yeah, that was stupid. Sorry about that. That's my bad. I just realized that. So 99. We'll use 96 for the X direction. Like, why is my node disappearing when the doors open? It doesn't make any sense. Well, duh, because you chose a node that's on the door and rotates when the door opens. There we go. Okay, so now we can actually see our node. It obviously needs to come back to the right. So, you went a little crazy there. With the 0.75, obviously needs to come back to the right a little bit. So we're going to make it, I'm going to try 0.3, see what that does. And I'll bring it down too, because I know it needs to come down. Make it 0.15. See what that does. Oh, so funny story here. Well, not funny, but interesting story here on this picture. So, this picture was taken at Leonard Butt Sales. I visited there in the summer of 2013. So that guy standing there, obviously I was escorted at all times when I was visiting there. So that guy standing there is one of the guys that works at Leonard. His name was well, I'm not gonna say his name, but But yeah, he went with me like everywhere I went while I was checking out the buses there. So he was just standing there watching me take pictures. But yeah, that was fun. That was a cool trip. I think that was the only picture I actually had that I got part of him in it though, which was good. Okay, so let's see what we accomplished here. Okay, so now we're too low. We still need to come a little bit back to the right. So, again, this is the fun part about doing flares, because it's just this over and over again, trial and error. It's so much fun. um, so we still need to come back to the right a little bit more, so we're going to do 0.2. We're too low now, so we're going to bump it up to 0.25, see if we can't get the height better. And drag it back into the pack, spawn it again, see what changed. Probably still won't be quite right. We're going to have to keep doing this over and over again until we finally get it where we want. But we're making progress. This is going to be done soon, I promise you. This is why I don't like working on flares. And this is just one flare. Like, imagine if you were trying to fix, like, all of the flares on a bus because they're all off. And you've got, like, 7 or 8 different flares that you want to... You gotta go through this process on, like, every single one of them. This is why I don't like flares. Have I not made that clear? If I haven't made that clear yet, I do not like working on flares. I avoid it if at all possible. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh, wow. That looks pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. So I am a perfectionist. So, obviously I'm not going to be okay with that because it's still a little too high and a little too far to the left. So at this point, I'm just going to start doing one at a time because this is going to take a lot of fine tuning now that we have it down to this level. So let's try 0.175, which will bring it just a little further to the right there. Okay, that could come a tiny bit more to the right. But it definitely needs to come down a little bit too, so. So we'll make this like 165 and try like 0.225 on this one. 220. Let's see how close we are here. It's too low now. That's pretty darn close. And also, like I mentioned earlier, you want to make the Z value as low as possible while still being able to see your flare. So I'm not gonna mess with that yet. I'm gonna do 0.22. I'm gonna do 0.23. And this needs to be 170, I bet. Aha, there we go. There, that is. Now, you see how as you rotate around, well, no, you don't, but as you rotate around the bus, the flare kind of gets bigger and smaller. This is probably a pretty good place to have it, have the Z, but you really see it move more You can kind of see it moving a little bit. But if your Z value is too big, you'll really see that flare move a lot as you rotate around the bus, and it doesn't look great. So that's why you want to try and keep it. Obviously, if it goes too small, it'll go into the body of the bus, and you won't be able to see it. So you don't want that, but you want to make it as small as possible without that happening. So I think that's a good spot for it. Um, if you wanted to change the size, I think that's a pretty good size right there. You could just change this number. If I wanted to make it bigger, go bigger. Smaller, go smaller. If you want to do that, I think that's a good size for it the way it is. So yeah, I think I'm gonna cut it here. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learn how much pain that you're looking at when you want to edit flares. Uh, it's not fun. If there's a better way to do them out there, please let me know, because this is really painful. But but it's the only way I know how to do it as of right now. So I hope this was helpful. Hope you learned something, and stay tuned for the next episode. I think I'm gonna do sounds next week. I think that'll be a good one. So thanks for watching.